This boy needs emergency help right now." The shout ripped through the diner like glass breaking. Maya Williams stood near the corner booth, her chest heaving, her brown eyes locked on the small boy slumped over a plate of pancakes. Julian Mercer rose halfway from his seat, stunned. "What did you say?" "I said," Maya repeated, slower but no less forceful. "Your son needs emergency help. Now." "No." Caleb Mercer was 5, pale and finiaboned, dressed in a tiny blazer like a miniature version of the man sitting across from him. He had been quiet all morning, staring at the maple syrup that dripped down his fork. At first, Maya thought he was shy, but then she saw the tremor in his left hand as he reached for his milk, the way the cup tilted dangerously, the droop at the corner of his mouth when he tried to smile. She'd noticed it 20 minutes ago while pouring refills. No one else had. The father, the billionaire, was too busy scrolling through emails, talking into his Bluetooth about market shares and deadlines. Caleb had dropped his spoon twice, and Maya had knelt to pick it up with a warm smile. That's when she saw how his left arm didn't lift quite right. Something inside her clenched. She'd seen this before, years ago. In the emergency room where her brother Malik had died because no one thought a poor black kid could have a stroke. Now, here it was again. Different skin, same signs. "Sweetheart," she said gently, crouching down. "Are you feeling dizzy?" Caleb blinked at her, confused. His voice came out thick and slurred. "My head hurts." Before Maya could move, his small body wobbled. His fork slipped from his fingers. He swayed, and then his right hand shot to his temple. Maya's instincts took over. She dropped the tray she was carrying and rushed forward, catching the boy just as his chair tipped. "Easy, baby. I've got you," she said, holding his shoulders to keep him upright. The father turned, startled. "What the hell are you doing?" "Sir, your son, he's in trouble," she said urgently. "He can't feel his arm. His speech is slurring. He needs an ambulance." Julian Mercer was already on his feet, shock flashing to fury. "Get away from him." He pulled Caleb from her grasp with more strength than he meant to. The edge of his watch clipped Maya's cheekbone. Pain burst white behind her eyes, but she didn't move away. "Please," she gasped, blood rising in her mouth. "He's having a neurological emergency." The boy leaned into his father, blinking slowly. "He's fine," Julian said, tone clipped. "He's just tired. He didn't sleep well." Maya shook her head. "Sir, I don't mean to scare you, but I've seen this before. Please, he's showing signs of neurological distress." Julian stiffened, his eyes, sharp and skeptical, fixed on her like a laser. "You're just a waitress," he said. "Who gave you the right to say that about my son?" The words struck harder than they should have. Maya opened her mouth, but something caught in her throat. She wasn't surprised she'd heard that phrase before, spat in different ways, from men in suits who thought titles mattered more than instincts. "I've worked in elder care. I've studied nursing. I've seen these symptoms before," she said carefully. "The way his hand isn't gripping, the left side of his face not moving. That's not just being tired." Julian's jaw tightened. "Wait, before we continue, if this story touched your heart, please hit subscribe. It truly encourages us to bring you more powerful stories. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know our amazing viewers around the world." His entire posture changed, shoulders squared, nostrils flaring. "You don't know me. You don't know him. And I don't know who sent you." Maya blinked. "Excuse me? You think I don't know people try to get to me through him? You walk over here, cause a scene. Accuse me of being a bad father. I'm not accusing you of anything," she shouted back, voice cracking. "I'm telling you he's in danger." "Oh," the boy whimpered softly against his father's shoulder. His left arm dangled lifelessly. No one in the diner moved. The manager finally rushed over, face red with panic. "Mr. Mercer, I'm so sorry, sir. I have no idea what's gotten into her." He turned to Maya, voice low but venomous. "You've just assaulted a customer's child. Are you insane?" "I didn't assault anyone," Maya said, pressing a napkin to her bleeding cheek. "The boy was falling. I caught him. Look at him, he needs help." But the manager wasn't listening. His smile turned apologetic as he faced Julian again. "Sir, she's new. I promise this will be handled. Please, Accept our apologies and your meals on the house. Julian didn't look at Maya. Keep your staff away from me. He strode out the door, Caleb limp in his arms. Maya took a step after them, but the manager grabbed her arm. Don't make this worse, he hissed. I'm trying to save his life, she said, voice shaking. Can't you see that? What I see is a young woman who doesn't know when to shut up, he snapped. You embarrassed the diner and terrified a customer who could buy this whole street. Maya stared at him. You're apologizing to the man who hit me, not the woman bleeding in front of you? He looked away. Go home, Maya. Take the week off without pay. She stood there for a long moment, her cheek throbbing, the taste of metal in her mouth. The bell above the door jingled as another customer entered, pretending not to notice her. Maya untied her apron slowly, folded it with trembling hands, and set it on the counter. That little boy, she whispered, might not make it through the night. The manager said nothing. Outside, the Virginia air was bright and sharp. Maya leaned against the brick wall behind the diner, her eyes burning. The world felt cruelly familiar, the disbelief, the dismissal, the quiet racism wrapped in politeness. She pulled out her phone and typed again. Pediatric stroke symptoms. Same list. Same danger. Her thumb hovered over the emergency number. What could she even say? I'm a waitress. A kid I don't know might be dying. But his rich father thinks I'm a threat. No one would listen. She closed her eyes, pressing her bruised cheek against the cool brick. Not again, she whispered. I won't let it happen again. Above her, a church bell rang somewhere in town, slow and distant. A mother and child passed by, laughing, the sound bright against the heavy silence in her chest. Maya straightened, tucked her phone into her pocket, and started walking home. Every step pulsed with the ache in her face, but under it there was something stronger resolve. She had seen the signs. She knew what they meant. And even if no one else believed her, she would find a way to make sure that little boy got help. Because she'd learned the hardest truth years ago, in a hospital hallway that smelled of bleach and heartbreak. Sometimes, the ones who see are the ones no one listens to. And sometimes, seeing is enough to save a life if you refuse to look away. Maya's apartment was on the second floor of a tired brick building at the edge of Glenwood's historic district. The stairs creaked as she climbed, each step echoing in the empty hallway like a reminder of everything she wanted to forget. Her keys jangled in her shaking hands as she pushed the door open and stepped inside. She didn't turn on the lights. The afternoon sun bled in through the blinds, casting thin gold lines across the worn carpet. Maya dropped her purse on the couch, sat down on the edge of the armrest, and let her body go still. For a moment, she simply breathed. Her cheek ached where the watch had hit her. She hadn't even looked in the mirror yet. Maybe she didn't want to see the damage. The emotional wound felt worse than the physical one, being accused of harming a child when all she had tried to do was help. She could still feel the heat of Julian Mercer's stare, cold, suspicious, like she was the danger in the room, and her manager apologizing to a billionaire while dismissing her like she was a child who had dropped a plate of eggs. Maya closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the wall. Her fingers trembled in her lap. She hadn't cried. Not yet. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out slowly. One notification. A voicemail from Rosa, her landlady. Hi, honey. Rosa's warm, raspy voice filled the silence. I saw you come in early today. Just checking if everything's all right. I left some soup by your door. Eat something, okay? You never come home this early unless something's wrong. Maya smiled despite the lump in her throat. Rosa was 70 years old, Italian-American, sharp as a tack and soft as bread pudding. She lived below Maya and had taken to treating her like a second daughter ever since Maya moved in 2 years ago. Maya stood, walked to the door, and sure enough there it was, a plastic container wrapped in foil with a note that simply read, "For strength." She carried it back inside but left it untouched on the table. Instead, she moved to the small bookshelf near the window and pulled down a photo frame. Her fingers brushed the glass, and her breath hitched. Malik smiled back at her from the picture. He was 12 in that photo, dressed in a Halloween costume made from cardboard and duct tape. A makeshift robot, holding up 2 bent arms like he was ready to take on the world. He hadn't made it to 13. Malik had collapsed during PE class. Teachers thought he was dehydrated. The school nurse said it was probably just heat. By the time someone called an ambulance, he was unresponsive. The ER doctor said it was a pediatric stroke, something no one expected, something no one believed until it was too late. Maya had been 19, halfway through nursing school. After Malik's death, she never finished. The halls of the hospital, once filled with purpose, became unbearable. She left her clinical rotation, took up work to support her grieving mother, and never went back. But she never stopped noticing, never stopped remembering the signs. And today she had seen those signs again. Her hands curled into fists. She stood up abruptly and walked to the kitchen. On the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a red heart, was her old CPR certification. Expired now, but still a reminder of what she once knew. What she still knew. She grabbed her laptop and opened it on the counter. Search. Signs of pediatric stroke. Again. Just to be sure. The list appeared. Sudden numbness or weakness, especially on one side. Trouble speaking or understanding speech. Difficulty walking, dizziness, loss of balance. Facial droop. Check, 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 check. She clicked into a medical forum. A pediatric nurse had posted a thread just days ago. Don't ignore subtle signs in children. Even small symptoms matter. Parents often miss what strangers can see. Maya sat back and stared at the screen. She thought of Caleb's glassy eyes, his slurred speech, his limp arm, and how his father had only glanced at him twice during breakfast, once to order toast, once to silence his whining. She opened another tab and began typing a message. To whom it may concern, I witnessed a child today exhibiting symptoms consistent with pediatric stroke. I do not know the child's full name, but I believe his father is Julian Mercer. But she stopped. What was she doing? Reporting to who? The police? Child Protective Services? She had no proof, no connection, no authority, just a bruised cheek and a reputation already smeared by assumptions. She closed the laptop. No. There had to be a better way. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Maya opened it cautiously. Rosa stood there, a scarf tied around her silver hair, concern etched into every wrinkle on her face. "Can I come in?" she asked. Maya stepped aside. Rosa walked in, eyeing her with that grandmotherly X-ray vision. "Sweetheart," she said, "what happened to your face?" Maya hesitated, then told her everything. The boy, the symptoms, the accusation, the dismissal. Rosa listened silently. When Maya finished, Rosa walked over, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said, "You did the right thing." "But nobody believes me," Maya whispered. "I'm just me." "No," Rosa said. "You're the kind of person this world needs more of. You saw something no one else saw, and you acted. That takes guts, that takes heart, and believe me, truth has a way of coming back around. If this moment moved you, hit the like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. You might not be the only one in your town hearing this story right now." Maya swallowed hard. "You think his father will listen?" she asked. Rosa smiled sadly. "Maybe not now. But if you're right, sweetheart, he'll have no choice." Maya nodded slowly, the weight in her chest shifting. Lighter, maybe, or just more focused. She didn't know how, but she would find a way to reach that boy. Somehow. She wasn't finished yet. She had carried this kind of pain before, and she'd carry it again if it meant saving someone else from it. The penthouse apartment on the hill was a fortress of glass and silence. From his study window, Julian Mercer could see the sweep of Glenwood below its quiet streets, the small shops opening for the day. If you're still here and enjoying the story, we'd love your support. Take a second to hit subscribe. It really means a lot. And the faint ribbon of smoke rising from Evelyn's diner. He stood there long after sunrise, one hand on the window frame, the other wrapped around a half-finished cup of coffee gone cold. Caleb was asleep in the next room. Julian could hear the soft rhythm of his son's breathing through the monitor. The sound usually comforted him, but today it made his stomach twist. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that waitress Maya, her face pale, her voice sharp and trembling. "He's in danger." The words clung to him like static. Julian exhaled slowly. He had always hated chaos. His whole life had been about control numbers, projections, markets, outcomes. He could predict how the global stock index would shift within an hour, but he couldn't make sense of what had happened yesterday in that diner. It wasn't just the embarrassment, though, that stung. It was the fear, the flash of panic he'd felt when Caleb had gone limp for a second. He'd told himself it was exhaustion, dehydration, anything but something worse. Now he wasn't sure. He rubbed the back of his neck, where tension had gathered like coiled wire. The bruise on his wrist, where he'd pulled his son away too roughly, had already begun to darken. Julian had built his company, Mercer Technologies, from a basement startup into a global empire. His name appeared in business magazines alongside words like visionary and strategist. But beneath the polished surface was a man held together by routines and regret. He thought of his ex-wife, Claire, how she used to worry about Caleb's health. "You don't look at him, Julian," she'd said once, packing her bags. "You manage him like he's an investment. Kids aren't portfolios. They're people." She'd been gone 3 years now. Remarried. Living in Chicago. The court had granted Julian full custody. He'd told himself it was what Caleb needed: stability, structure, a father who provided. But lately, even he could feel the distance. Caleb's laughter had faded into politeness. The house echoed too much. Julian turned away from the window and sat at his desk. The framed photograph of Caleb on his first day of kindergarten stared back at him. The boy in the picture was bright-eyed, confident. The child sleeping down the hall looked smaller, thinner. A flicker of doubt pricked the edges of his mind. He pushed it away. A knock on the door broke the stillness. "Mr. Mercer?" It was Hannah, the housekeeper. "Caleb's awake. He says he doesn't want breakfast." Julian frowned. He always eats breakfast. "Not today." He said his head hurts. The words hit him harder than they should have. He stood up quickly. "I'll check on him." Caleb was sitting in bed, holding a stuffed bear with one arm. His left hand rested limply at his side. His eyes met Julian's with a sleepy confusion. "Hey, champ," Julian said, forcing a smile. "You okay?" "My head feels weird," Caleb mumbled, "and my arm's heavy." Julian crouched beside the bed. "Maybe you slept on it funny." "No." He tried to lift the boy's left arm gently. It didn't move easily. Caleb winced. Something icy crept through Julian's chest. He remembered the waitress again, her voice, the panic, the certainty. "He's in trouble." Julian swallowed hard. "We'll get you checked out, okay? Just to be safe." He called his assistant. "Find a pediatric neurologist in Glenwood," he ordered. "Now." But the earliest appointment available was 2 weeks away. The nearest children's hospital was an hour drive. The local clinic receptionist said she could fit them in sometime next Thursday. Julian hung up, jaw tight. How could there be so few options in a town like this? He considered calling a private physician in D.C. But Caleb needed rest first. He told himself it could wait until tomorrow. He didn't notice his son's left eyelid drooping slightly as he tucked him back into bed. Later that morning, he arrived at the Mercer Tech headquarters downtown. The open concept office hummed with quiet efficiency. Assistants whispered. Screens glowed. Julian walked through the glass lobby, nodding curtly at greetings. "Rough morning?" his CFO asked, catching up beside him. Julian's lips twitched in something like a smile. "My son wasn't feeling great. Just tired." "That's kids for you," the man chuckled. "They bounce back fast." Julian nodded, but the words didn't land. He walked into his office, closed the door, and sat down. His reflection in the dark monitor looked older than 44. He typed pediatric arm weakness into the search bar. Halfway down the list of results, his hand froze over the keyboard. The same phrase appeared again and again. Stroke in children, neurological emergency, call 911 immediately. He stared at the screen until the words blurred. A knock came at the door again. His assistant stepped in. "Sir, the Glenwood Gazette wants a comment about what happened at the diner yesterday." "Oh." Julian's head snapped up. "What?" "They said someone posted online. A waitress claimed she tried to help your son, but you reacted badly." Julian's pulse quickened. "Who posted it?" "No name, just a local account." He sank back in his chair. For a moment, shame burned hotter than anger. "Tell them no comment," he said quietly, "and make sure that woman's not harassed online." The assistant blinked. "Of course, sir." When she left, Julian rubbed his temples. He couldn't shake the image of the woman's face. Fear, conviction, pain. She'd believed she was right, and maybe she was. That night, he stood in the doorway of Caleb's room again. The boy was sleeping uneasily, his lips parted. The lamp cast a soft circle of light across his pale cheek. Julian hesitated, then sat beside him. He brushed a hand through the boy's hair. For the first time in months, he whispered, "I love you, buddy." Caleb didn't stir. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Julian stayed there for a long time, his mind running through every business problem he'd ever solved, searching for the one solution that mattered now, the one he might already be too late to find. The county clinic on Oakwood Street looked more like a converted post office than a medical facility. Its beige brick facade and flickering neon open sign didn't inspire confidence. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paper, and the waiting room chairs creaked under the weight of worry. Maya sat in one of those chairs, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She hadn't come as a patient. She wasn't there for herself. She was there for a boy whose name she barely knew but whose face hadn't left her thoughts since yesterday. She approached the intake desk earlier that morning with rehearsed calm. "I'm here to speak to someone about a child who may need medical help. I'm not a family member, but I saw concerning symptoms." The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Linda, looked up without much interest. "We don't accept reports from non-guardians. If you have concerns, you need to contact the family or child services." "I don't know his full name," Maya admitted. "But I know his father. Julian Mercer. The boy's name is Caleb. He's 5. I saw him at Evelyn's diner yesterday. He was showing signs of a stroke. I used to study nursing. I know what I saw." Linda's expression didn't change. "If you're worried about abuse or neglect, I can give you a number to call. But without parental consent or documentation, we can't accept walk-in concerns." "I'm sorry." Maya stood there, jaw clenched, trying not to let frustration boil over. "So what do I do? Wait for him to collapse again? What if next time no one's there?" Linda looked genuinely weary. "Honey, this system barely works for people with insurance. I wish I had a better answer." And now, Maya sat in the corner, staring at the outdated health posters on the wall. The weight in her chest was heavier today. The bruise on her cheek had faded into a dull shadow, but the ache of helplessness felt rawer than ever. She pulled out her phone and scrolled again through her web searches. Moya disease. Transient ischemic attack in children. Pediatric stroke response time. Each one told the same story. Time was everything. The swing of the door startled her. She looked up to see a young nurse wheeling an elderly man in for a checkup. Behind them, a tall man in a gray hoodie stepped in and approached the front desk. Julian Mercer. Her heart stuttered. He looked nothing like the tailored billionaire from yesterday. Gone was the designer suit and sharp confidence. His face was drawn, beard unshaven, eyes shadowed. He held Caleb's hand gently as the boy shuffled beside him, his steps uneven, like one side of his body was heavier than the other. Caleb's left arm hung limp. Maya rose before she could stop herself. Julian turned and saw her. For a second, his expression was unreadable. Then recognition hit, and tension. "Maya," he said cautiously. She ignored the look from the receptionist, the buzz of curious stares. "You brought him here." Julian nodded. He said his head hurt again. "And his arm isn't improving." She exhaled, her shoulders sagging with something like relief. "You did the right thing. I'm not sure I did it fast enough." Silence lingered between them, thick but not hostile. "I didn't mean to startle you yesterday," she said gently, "but I saw something no one else seemed to notice. I had to say something." Julian looked down at Caleb, then back at her. "You were right. I didn't see it. Or I didn't want to." Maya crouched down in front of the boy. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "You remember me?" Caleb gave a shy nod. "You caught me when I fell." "Yeah, I did." The nurse called out a name. Julian looked up. "That's us." He hesitated, then looked at Maya. "Would you mind waiting?" She blinked. "You want me to stay?" He nodded. "Just in case. I don't hear everything, or understand it." Maya felt her throat tighten. "Of course." They disappeared into the back, and Maya returned to her seat. Her hand still trembled slightly, but it was different now, less rage, more resolve. She had stepped into the fire, been burned, and walked back into it anyway. 40 minutes passed before Julian returned. Caleb was quiet, curled into his father's arms. Julian looked older than he had that morning. "They're referring us to County General in Richmond," he said. "The doctor thinks it might be neurological." He mentioned something called moya moya. Maya swallowed hard. "It's rare, dangerous, but it's treatable, especially if you catch it early." Julian nodded. "They're calling an ambulance." I offered to drive, but the doctor insisted. He looked down at his son again. "I almost waited another day." "You didn't," she said. "That's what matters." He looked up at her, eyes full of something unfamiliar humility. "You saved him." "I don't know why I assumed the worst about you." Maya gave a small, tired smile. "I've had worse days." Julian chuckled, though it came out strained. "I still don't understand how you saw it." "Because I've lived it," she said simply, "and I learned to never ignore the quiet signs." The ambulance arrived a few minutes later. Julian hesitated, then turned to Maya again. "Would you come with us? I could use someone who knows what she's talking about." Maya blinked in surprise, then nodded. "Let me grab my bag." As they stepped outside into the crisp air, Maya looked at the boy nestled in his father's arms. She didn't know what the next few hours would bring, but for the first time in years, she felt something stronger than anger or fear. She felt useful. And that, in its own quiet way, felt like healing. The wail of the ambulance siren cut through the quiet country roads of Glenwood, Virginia, a high-pitched scream that twisted through the early afternoon stillness. Inside the back of the vehicle, Caleb lay strapped to a stretcher, an oxygen cannula resting beneath his nose. His cheeks were pale, his left hand unmoving. Julian sat beside him, shoulders tight, elbows pressed into his knees. He looked like a man unraveling his suit replaced by a rumpled hoodie, his eyes rimmed red not from exhaustion, but from something deeper, guilt. Across from him, Maya sat still, watching the monitor, reading every flicker on the screen. She didn't speak unless necessary, but her presence alone carried a steadying force that Julian hadn't expected or deserved. The paramedic leaned in. "He's stable, BP's on the low side, but not critical. We'll be at County General in 23 minutes. Dot." Julian barely nodded. He turned to Maya. "He was trying to tell me. Days ago. Maybe weeks." His voice was hoarse. He'd say he was tired. Said his head felt funny. I thought he wanted to skip piano. Or get out of schoolwork." Maya met his eyes. "You're not the first parent to miss the signs." "I'm not just a parent," Julian said. "I'm a father with resources, with access. I should have known better." Maya hesitated, then said, "Maybe that's part of the problem." "May." Julian looked at her, surprised. "You think power replaces perception. You thought being in control meant you couldn't be blindsided. But sickness doesn't care how many companies you run." Julian sat back, her words hitting closer than he wanted to admit. "And for what it's worth," she added more gently, "you listened today. That might make all the difference." Caleb stirred on the stretcher. "Daddy?" he whispered. Julian leaned over immediately. "I'm right here, buddy." "No, my arm feels weird." "I know," Julian said, voice cracking. "We're going to get it fixed, okay? We're going to the best doctors." Caleb tried to smile, but only the right side of his face moved. The asymmetry tore at Julian's chest. Maya watched the exchange quietly. But every movement of the child triggered memories like landmines. Malik's eyes when he realized he couldn't move his left leg. His confusion. The doctors who brushed it off until it was too late. She blinked hard and forced herself into the present. "Has Caleb had headaches before?" she asked Julian gently. "Sometimes." He'd say it hurt behind his eyes, or that his neck was stiff. But I chalked it up to too much screen time. Too little sleep. You know, kid stuff. She nodded. Moya Moya's sneaky. It mimics other things. Most doctors won't even test for it unless someone pushes. So you need to push. Hard. Julian absorbed this, the weight of responsibility falling heavier by the mile. The ambulance took a wide curve, and through the back windows, County General appeared 6 floors of red brick and glass, perched on a hill overlooking the city. Maya exhaled slowly. This place saved lives during the pandemic. The neuro team is solid. If there's a chance, it's here. As they pulled into the emergency bay, a team of nurses and a pediatric neurologist awaited them, clipboards ready, expressions tight with focus. Julian climbed out first, holding Caleb's small hand as the stretcher rolled out. Maya stepped aside but followed closely. "Mr. Mercer," the lead doctor said, shaking Julian's hand quickly. "Dr. Patricia Reeves. We'll start with a CT and MRI. Check blood flow. And run labs immediately. Do you have a recent medical history for Caleb?" Julian nodded. "It's on my phone. I'll send it now." Dr. Reeves turned to Maya. "And you are?" "She's the reason we're here," Julian said quietly. "She saw what I didn't." Dr. Reeves gave Maya a quick, respectful nod. "Then thank you. You might have saved this boy's brain." They disappeared down the hallway with Caleb, leaving Julian and Maya in a quiet waiting room painted in soft blues and greens meant to calm the terrified. Julian sank into one of the chairs, elbows on knees again. Maya sat beside him, both of them staring at the door where Caleb had gone. "You don't have to stay," he murmured after a moment. "I know," she replied. Another long pause. "You said you've seen this before." Maya swallowed. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "My brother, Malik. He was 12. He collapsed during gym class. They thought it was heat stroke. By the time they realized it wasn't, he was gone." Julian turned his head. "I'm sorry. I was studying to be a nurse when it happened. After he died, I couldn't finish. I couldn't walk into another hospital without seeing him on every bed." Julian nodded slowly. "And yet, here you are." "Yeah," Maya said. "Here I am." The door swung open. Dr. Reeves returned, removing her gloves. "Mr. Mercer," she said calmly but firmly. "Caleb's scans show narrowing of the cerebral arteries consistent with moyamoya disease. He's at high risk for another, more serious stroke. We need to act fast." Julian stood slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Consent for a cerebral bypass procedure. It's complex, but our team is ready. We need to restore blood flow to prevent further damage." Julian didn't hesitate. "Do it." Dr. Reeves nodded and disappeared again. Julian dropped back into the chair, head in his hands. "I could have lost him." "You didn't," Maya said. "You still have time." They sat in silence, two strangers bound by a child's fragile heartbeat, and the razor-thin line between too late and just in time. Outside, the clouds gathered, and somewhere in the distance, church bells rang for the top of the hour. Julian closed his eyes and said a prayer he hadn't said in 20 years. The waiting room outside pediatric surgery was designed to feel like a place of comfort. Muted colors, fish-shaped mobiles suspended from the ceiling, a children's bookshelf in the corner untouched by adult hands. But no decor could soften the antiseptic bite of anxiety in the air. Julian sat forward on the edge of his chair, fingers laced so tightly together they trembled from the pressure. His phone sat untouched beside him. The man who once never looked away from a screen now hadn't checked a single email in over 2 hours. Across from him, Maya sipped slowly from a paper cup of vending machine coffee. It tasted burnt, metallic. She didn't care. Every 10 minutes, Julian would glance toward the surgical wing's double doors. Each time they remained closed. She said it'd take a few hours. Maya reminded him gently. Julian nodded, but his foot tapped relentlessly. "I know. He trailed off, eyes rimmed red. "I was so sure I had more time, that he was just tired. Maybe having a growth spurt. Kids fall down. They drop things. I didn't think it could be this." Maya let his silence fill the room. "He was trying to tell me," Julian whispered. "He was. Every day. I just kept saying, 'You're fine.' I even told him not to exaggerate." She leaned forward. "You're not the only parent who's made that mistake." "No, we 5. Yeah," he said bitterly. "But other parents don't have the kind of money or resources I do. I had every tool, every connection. Still, I didn't see." Maya looked at him for a moment, then said, "We don't see what we're not taught to look for. You were taught to fight competitors, to measure risk, to outthink the boardroom. But children don't follow logic. They whisper warnings instead of shouting them. if you're not quiet enough to listen. He looked up at her. You heard him. I did. The doors opened suddenly, and both of them stood. A nurse stepped into view. Mr. Mercer? Dr. Reeves will be out shortly. Your son's in recovery. The procedure went well. Julian staggered back into his seat. His face crumbled, and he ran a hand down it like he was wiping away years. Thank God, he breathed. Thank God. The nurse nodded and left again. Julian exhaled shakily and looked over at Maya. You prayed? She smiled faintly. Not out loud. He chuckled just barely. Me neither. Not since college. There was a long pause before he added, You didn't have to stay. I know, she replied. I still don't get why you did. Maya's gaze softened, drifting to the wall clock. Because I remember what it was like sitting in a hospital waiting room. Waiting for news that never came. Because I know what silence sounds like when it settles in your chest like grief. Julian didn't speak. I also stayed, she added, because your son is brave, and he deserves to be heard. At that moment, Dr. Reeves came through the doors, removing her surgical cap. Her expression was calm, but her steps carried the weight of the last few hours. Mr. Mercer, she began. The bypass procedure was successful. We were able to redirect blood flow using an artery from Caleb's scalp to his brain. He'll be monitored closely for swelling or clotting, but for now he's stable. Julian's throat tightened. Can I see him? In a few minutes. He's coming out of anesthesia. Be gentle when you talk to him. His speech may be slower, and movement on his left side will take time to return. But he's awake, and he's asking for his dad. Maya smiled. Julian's knees nearly buckled from relief. I want to thank you again, Dr. Reeves said, turning to Maya. Without your quick thinking, she's not just a waitress, Julian interrupted quietly. She's the reason I still have my son. Maya looked away, suddenly overwhelmed. 20 minutes later, they stood at the threshold of Caleb's room. The small boy lay in a hospital bed, an IV in one arm. Monitors quietly beeping beside him. His skin looked fragile, but his eyes were awake. Julian walked in slowly. Hey, champ. Caleb blinked. His right hand twitched. Daddy. Julian reached for him, sat on the bed. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Caleb's voice was slurred but clear. I was scared. You didn't see me. Julian felt those words like knives. He nodded, eyes wet. I know, buddy. But I see you now. I promise I'll never stop seeing you again. Caleb's tiny hand reached out, resting on his father's knee. Maya stood in the doorway, unnoticed. She watched them, heart aching with relief and memory. Julian turned, saw her, and gestured for her to come closer. Caleb looked at her, his lips curving into a half-smile. Hi, Miss Maya. Hey, sweetheart, she said softly. You're one tough kid. Did you tell my daddy? I did. Lie. He gave a small nod, satisfied. Thank you. Maya's throat closed. Julian stood, facing her. His voice dropped. I owe you more than I can say. She didn't answer. Not yet. Because in that moment, the only thing that mattered was the boy in the bed, his eyes open, his father's hand in his, and the second chance breathing between them. The halls of County General were quieter after midnight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the vinyl floors. In room 409B, the machines monitoring Caleb's vitals pulsed in a steady rhythm. Gentle beeps and blinking green lights, offering a strange sense of peace. Julian sat in the reclining chair next to the bed, his body slouched but his eyes wide open. Sleep was impossible. Every time he let his lids fall, he saw flashes. Caleb's crooked smile, the way his small hand couldn't grip a fork, the blank look in his eyes when Julian had told him to tough it out. Now his son was lying here in a pediatric ICU with stitches along his scalp and bandages around his head, and Julian couldn't stop wondering, what if Maya hadn't been there? What if I had pulled him away faster? What if? He glanced over at the opposite corner. Maya had dozed off in the second visitor chair, arms folded, head tilted slightly to one side. Her shoes were off, her feet tucked beneath her, and a thin hospital blanket draped over her shoulders. Julian had offered to get her a cab home, a hotel, anything. She'd refused. "I'll stay till morning," she'd said, "if that's okay." He hadn't had the words to argue. Now, in the hush of early morning, Julian watched her sleep. There was something disarming about her, something he hadn't seen in people in a long time. Not just conviction, but a kind of quiet defiance. She didn't flinch when challenged, didn't beg to be believed. She simply stood her ground, even when it meant being pushed to it. He rubbed his hands together, suddenly restless. He stood and paced quietly to the window, looking out over the parking lot below. The street lamps cast halos on the wet asphalt, and the world outside seemed both distant and indifferent. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. "Glenwood Gazette is still requesting comment. Also, social media is lighting up. Number diner incident is trending in. State, Julian Sahil." He had ignored the storm brewing online, but it was their angry tweets, op-eds, and speculation. Someone had filmed part of the diner encounter. It had gone viral. A wealthy man yanking his child from a waitress's hands, accusations flying, a black woman bleeding and dismissed. He hadn't seen the video yet. He wasn't ready. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Behind him, Maya stirred. "You don't sleep much, do you?" she asked groggily. Julian turned. "Neither do you, apparently." She sat up, blinking against the harsh light. "Hospitals don't exactly make it easy." He offered her a fresh cup of vending machine coffee. "It's terrible," he warned. She took it anyway. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a moment, sipping coffee that neither of them enjoyed, both trying to ignore the weight of everything hanging in the room. "Do you remember the exact moment you knew?" Julian finally asked. Maya nodded slowly. "When he tried to pick up his milk with his right hand, but his left just hung there. That, and the way his face moved when he smiled. It was like he was trying to convince everyone he was okay, but I could see half of him didn't believe it." Julian swallowed hard. "He was trying to be strong," Maya said, her voice quiet. "For you." Julian looked away. "I know that look," she added. "It's the face kids wear when they're afraid of disappointing someone they love." He nodded. "I've been pushing him. Piano lessons, chess club, strict bedtimes. I thought structure would help, that if I just kept his days full, he wouldn't miss his mom." Maya tilted her head. "And what about you?" He hesitated. "What about me?" "You lost someone too." He exhaled sharply. "Claire left 3 years ago. She got remarried last fall. Caleb's still trying to understand why she doesn't call much." Maya said nothing, but her silence was heavy with understanding. "I thought if I just provided enough," he continued, "kept everything running smooth, I could shield him from all of it." "Money doesn't patch cracks," Maya said gently. "It just carpets over them." Julian let out a dry laugh. "You should trademark that." She smiled faintly. "Maybe." The door creaked open, and a nurse peeked in. "He's waking up." They both stood immediately. Caleb blinked slowly as they approached, his face pale and groggy. One side of his mouth twitched into a sleepy grin. "Daddy, Miss Maya." Julian's chest nearly caved in from the sound of his voice. "I had a dream," Caleb murmured. "You were both there. You were talking nice." Julian knelt beside the bed. "We are talking nice, buddy. We're right here." Caleb looked at Maya. "Did you stay all night?" "I did." "Why?" She smiled softly. "Because you're worth staying for." Caleb blinked. "Even though I'm sick?" Julian's throat tightened. Maya reached over and gently took the boy's right hand. "Especially because you're sick. And brave. And smarter than most grown-ups I know." Caleb nodded sleepily, content with that answer. Julian watched them both, his son and the woman who had changed everything. Not just the medical emergency, but the way he saw his own life. He had built an empire by seeing opportunity before others did. But this woman, this waitress, had seen what he couldn't. And now, because of her, his son had a second chance. He'd never let himself forget that. The following Sunday morning, the sunlight broke through the kitchen window of Julian Mercer's penthouse, not with cold indifference as it usually did, but with something warmer, softer. As if the light itself was asking permission to stay. Julian stood barefoot at the kitchen counter in a gray t-shirt and jeans, pouring pancake batter into a sizzling pan. He'd never used the stovetop before last week. Until then, His idea of breakfast with Caleb involved catered French toast or drive-through smoothies. Today was different. "Can I stir the blueberries in?" Caleb's voice echoed from behind him, a little weaker than it had been a few months ago, but clearer than it had been in weeks. Julian turned, smiling. "You bet, champ." Caleb shuffled toward the counter, his left leg still dragging slightly, the physical therapist's tape visible beneath the hem of his pajama shorts. His left arm hung closer to his side now. Slightly lifted progress. Not a miracle, but progress. Julian handed him a bowl, guiding his hand. "Nice and easy. We don't want pancake splatter on the ceiling." Caleb giggled. "Then don't cook like a mad scientist." Julian laughed a sound. Maya would later say she hadn't heard from him in any of their previous conversations. The doorbell buzzed at exactly 9 a.m. Julian wiped his hands and walked to open it. Maya stood there with a brown paper bag, hair in a neat twist, hoodie zipped up halfway. "Still don't trust your pancake recipe?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "I trust it," Julian said, stepping aside to let her in, but Caleb insisted we needed the special cinnamon syrup from that bakery on Main. Maya Grinnet. Smart kid. Inside, the kitchen smelled like butter and vanilla. Caleb waved from the breakfast nook, a spatula in one hand like a scepter. "Hey, Miss Maya." "Hi, Chef Caleb," she replied. "How's the left hand today?" "Still sleepy," he said with a shrug. "But Miss Dana says I'll get stronger." Julian set out 3 plates. He'd started doing that without thinking, setting a place for Maya when she visited. She'd become a fixture in their Sundays, and neither of them questioned it anymore. Over breakfast, they talked about everything but hospitals. Caleb told Maya about his superhero therapist, who let him play catch with foam balls. Julian listened quietly, occasionally jumping in to clarify or correct, though more often now he just let Caleb speak. The boy was healing not just physically, but emotionally. His confidence was returning, slow and steady. Halfway through the meal, Julian said, "Caleb's play is next weekend. He's the narrator." Maya's eyes lit up. "No kidding?" Caleb nodded, blushing. "It's about a tree. I have to say things like, 'And then the leaves turned gold in the fall.' I get to wear a vest and everything." "You're going to crush it," Maya said. Julian cleared his throat. "We were wondering if you'd like to come?" Maya blinked. "Me?" "Yeah," Caleb said. "You're kind of part of our team now." She smiled. "Then I'll be there." After breakfast, Caleb headed to his room for his reading session. That left Julian and Maya alone in the kitchen. He began gathering dishes. "Let me help," Maya offered. He looked over at her. "You've helped enough." "Now." She paused, drying her hands. "You still think that?" Julian set down the plate he was holding. "No. I think I didn't say thank you properly. And I think there's no way I ever could." Maya met his gaze. "It wasn't about being thanked." "I know," he said, "but it still matters." He leaned against the counter, voice quieter. "You changed everything, Maya. You changed how I see him, how I see myself. I didn't realize how far I'd drifted until you stood in front of me that day." Maya looked down. "You were trying your best. Sometimes your best isn't enough." She studied him. "And sometimes it is when you're willing to grow." The silence between them now was not awkward or heavy, but full, complete. Julian broke it with a breath. "I've been thinking about stepping back from the company, letting my COO take the reins, being more present for Caleb." Maya nodded. "He doesn't need a CEO. He needs a dad." Julian chuckled. "You've got a gift for calling things exactly as they are." "I've had practice." He looked at her, seriously now. "Would it be crazy if I said I want to keep you in our lives? Not just as the woman who saved my son, but someone I trust. Someone Caleb trusts." Maya hesitated, then said, "It wouldn't be crazy, but it might get complicated." He smiled. "Good. Complicated usually means something's real." She smiled back. "We'll see where it goes." "Do." As she left later that morning, Julian stood at the door, watching her walk toward her car. Caleb peeked from behind the curtain. "She's nice." "She is. Do you like her?" Julian smiled. "I do." "Good," Caleb said. "I think we need more nice people around." Julian crouched beside him. "You're right, champ. And thanks to her, we've got a pretty great team. They watched Maya drive away, the sun now fully shining over Glenwood brighter, somehow, than it had been in a long time. By midweek, the quiet warmth of Sunday had been swallowed by the cold sharpness of reality. Julian Mercer's name was back in headlines this time, not for a merger, an IPO, or a philanthropic gala. This time, the coverage came with blurry screenshots, Reddit threads, and morning talk shows discussing that diner incident. The video had resurfaced, but now, someone had paired it with a side-by-side update. Billionaire drags son away from black waitress, later credits her for saving his life. Talk show panels were split down the middle. Half praised Maya for her courage and composure. The other half dissected Julian's initial reaction with biting scrutiny. Twitter was even worse. Some called it a redemption arc. Others called it damage control. And somewhere in the chaos, Maya Williams' name was dragged into a storm she never asked for. She was walking home from the community center that Wednesday afternoon when her phone buzzed for the third time that hour. A news outlet, another podcast producer, even someone from a book agent's office. She ignored them all. When she reached her building, the landlord, Mr. Daniels, a gray-haired Vietnam vet who usually minded his own business, stepped into the hallway. "Maya," he said softly, "that news clip, it's everywhere." She braced herself. "I know. You all right?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Getting there," he gave a grunt. "If anyone shows up at your door with a camera, they'll have to get past me." She smiled. "Thanks, Mr. Daniels." Back in her apartment, she stared at her cracked phone screen. One voicemail stood out among the noise. From Julian. "Maya, I know this is probably overwhelming. I didn't expect this either. I'm trying to shield Caleb from it all. But I just want to say again I'm sorry. For what I did that day. For what this has become. You don't owe me a response. I just hope you're okay." She listened twice before deleting it. Meanwhile, Julian stood in the hallway outside his own office, one floor below the Mercer and Kane executive suite, staring through the floor-to-ceiling glass into a boardroom full of restless men in ties. He wasn't there for the meeting. He had bigger things to do now. "Sir," his assistant Abby whispered, catching up to him, "PR says we need a statement." "I'm not giving a statement." "But draft a letter to Maya instead," he said. "Not for the press. For her." Abby blinked. "And what do I say?" Julian looked out at the skyline. "Tell the truth. That I judged her without listening. That my son is alive because she stood her ground when I didn't deserve it. That I'm not trying to spin a narrative. I'm just trying to be a better man." That evening, Maya returned to her shift at Evelyn's diner for the first time since the incident. The regulars greeted her like a daughter coming home from war. "Got your table ready, sugar," called Marla, the 60-year-old server with a laugh like an old motorbike. A few customers clapped when Maya tied her apron on. But there were stares, too. A couple whispered near the back booth. A man with a laptop snapped a photo before pretending he didn't. Still, she worked her station. It was near closing when the door chimed again. And there he was, Julian Mercer, in jeans and a flannel shirt, holding Caleb's hand. The diner went quiet. Maya stood at the counter, suddenly unsure of how to breathe. Julian approached slowly. "We didn't come to make a scene. I just thought maybe it was time I learned how to order pancakes like a regular person." Caleb beamed. "I want the blueberry kind, like Sunday." Marla, somewhere behind Maya, let out a delighted snort. "Well, sit yourselves down, gentlemen. We got room." Julian looked at Maya. "If that's okay with you." Maya gave a slow nod. "Yeah, it's okay. Later, as she brought out their order, extra syrup, no powdered sugar, just as Caleb liked it. Julian looked up at her. "I saw the comments. I saw what people are saying about you. They don't know you. Not like I do." She placed the plate gently in front of Caleb. "They know enough." Julian shook his head. "They know your strength. But they don't know your story. They don't know what it cost you to stand there that day and not walk away. Even when you were bleeding." Maya didn't reply. He added, "I want to fix this. Not with a donation or an article, but with time, with presence. I want to show Caleb that admitting you were wrong can be the beginning, not the end." Maya tilted her head, studying him. That's a good start. A long silence. Then Caleb, with a mouthful of pancake, said, Miss Maya, do you want to come to my play and the pizza party after? She grinned. You throwing a pizza party too? He nodded. Dad said I could invite my best people. Mo. Julian looked at her, waiting. Maya exhaled, something warm creeping into her chest. Then I guess I'll have to come. Caleb pumped his fist. Yes. The diner buzzed again with quiet chatter, the tension dissolving as pancakes disappeared from plates and laughter returned to the room. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but it was something. A start. Saturday arrived with a soft drizzle that clung to the streets of Glenwood, turning sidewalks into silver veins and making the autumn leaves stick to the pavement like scattered confetti, the kind of weather that made people cancel plans or, in Julian Mercer's case, reschedule corporate deals. But nothing was going to keep him from the elementary school auditorium that day. He adjusted Caleb's tiny bow tie with careful fingers, crouched to meet his son's eye. Remember, Julian said, smoothing the collar, just speak clearly. Project your voice. And if you get nervous, I find Miss Maya, Caleb said confidently. Julian chuckled. Or maybe me. Caleb thought for a second, then smiled. Yeah, you too. Julian stood, turning toward Maya, who stood a few feet away in the hallway, adjusting a scarf around her neck. She looked radiant in a simple forest green coat and dark slacks, casual, but elegant in a way that wasn't trying to impress anyone. Thank you, Julian said, low enough that Caleb wouldn't hear. For coming. For everything. Maya nodded, eyes scanning the children and parents rushing through the hallway. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Inside the auditorium, parents shuffled to find seats marked with hand-painted reserved signs. Maya found her spot near the third row, flanked by other proud families. Julian joined her a moment later, carrying 2 programs and a bottle of water for Caleb's post-performance celebration. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. Then, from behind the curtain, a tiny spotlight illuminated the center stage, and there stood Caleb, holding his script with both hands, his posture straight, his knees wobbling only slightly. Good afternoon, he said, voice echoing through the auditorium. Welcome to The Giving Tree, our class play. A collective awe rippled through the crowd. Maya held her breath. I will be your narrator, Caleb continued. This is a story about love, and how sometimes, love means giving away parts of yourself to help someone else. Maya blinked hard. Julian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, a gentle smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. The play unfolded with charming simplicity, children in cardboard leaves, others dressed as lumberjacks or picnic-goers. Caleb's narration carried the show. There was an occasional stumble, a few slurred syllables, but each time, he found his rhythm again. He even glanced toward the third row once or twice, where Maya gave him a subtle thumbs up. At the end, when the tree, now only a stump, welcomed the boy to sit and rest, Caleb read his final lines with a quiet strength, and the boy sat down, and the tree was happy. The curtain fell to a roar of applause. Julian was on his feet immediately. Maya stood with him, both of them clapping as Caleb's classmates took their bows. After the show, parents and children flooded the hallway with the kind of buzz only a successful school play can create, warm, chaotic, and full of camera flashes. Caleb ran toward them, his cheeks pink from excitement. You were incredible, Maya said, crouching to hug him. I didn't mess up too much, Caleb said, grinning. Not even once, Julian said. You carried the whole show, kiddo. That. Caleb turned to Maya again. Did you hear the line about giving away parts of yourself? She nodded. I did. It made me think of you. Her chest ached at the words. I want to give back too, Caleb added. Like the tree. Julian met her eyes, the weight of that moment hanging between them. Later that afternoon, the 3 of them made their way to a nearby pizza parlor, where Caleb's class had reserved a party room. Balloons in primary colors floated above the booths, and the scent of melted cheese filled the air. Julian kept his distance at first, letting Caleb bask in the attention of his classmates. But eventually, he made his way to Maya, who sat at the edge of the room with a slice of pizza and a soda. You ever think about going back into medicine? He asked casually. She looked at him sideways. Not exactly the lightest party topic. He smiled. I've been thinking, I know this girl sharp, compassionate, saved my son's life in under 90 seconds. Doesn't scare easy. The kind of person who belongs in a hospital, helping people, not pouring coffee in a diner. Maya folded her napkin slowly. Julian, I'm not offering you charity, he said firmly, or a job. I'm just saying, if you ever wanted to go back, I'd invest in that future. No strings, just belief. She looked at him for a long moment.